Whenever I start talking about encryption, people's eyes just glaze over. It's a complicated mathematical thing. They don't know what it is. They don't use it as far as they're concerned, although actually pretty much everyone does every day. And it's all far too technical. So I want to try and explain the problem here without getting into all the technicalities. People want to communicate privately. And of course, there's lots saying, if you've got nothing to hide, you've got nothing to fear. Well, just look at how many people send letters in envelopes. I have one here from my bank. It's in an envelope. They don't want anyone else to be able to see what's in there apart from me. Not the postman, not the other people in my house before I get the letter. So they've put it in an envelope, which you can't see through, it's opaque. Now, this doesn't actually guarantee that the letter itself is private. Someone could open the letter. It's not actually very hard. You know, put your finger along the edge and bingo, now open the letter and you can see inside. But I know you've done it because you can see the envelope's been opened, and obviously there's ways of steaming open letters and sealing them back, but they're not perfect. So in general, people can see that the letter's been opened. And that is a source of deterrent because there are laws about interfering with the mail, and that would mean that the postman couldn't routinely just open everyone's letter and read it, even if they knew, because people would report him to the police, for example. So there is a deterrent, but it's not an absolute security, it's not an absolute privacy. But people do want private communications, otherwise they wouldn't use envelopes. The problem is, when you're sending communications electronically, there's no fingerprints left when someone reads it. It's possible to read your emails as they fly across the wire without you knowing that anyone's read them, and that's potentially a problem. So what we do in the technology industry is we do this encryption thing. We make the letter unreadable, and it's very similar to basically taking the letter and putting it in the envelope again, except it's a kryptonite envelope, or something. It's impossible to open, even if you wanted to. Only the final intended recipient can actually open it, and that's all done by maths. That's what this encryption stuff is. The problem is, for most people, doing that encryption, doing that process, is a little bit of extra work. You might need to install an extra plugin or app into your mail client, and you almost certainly have to configure a few things to be able to correctly identify the keys that you're using to send the message to a certain person and make sure it's not someone impersonating them. So it's a little bit of extra work. And people don't want that. People want to just be able to click on iMessage or WhatsApp and use their phone to send a message to someone and not have to worry about whether it's being read by other people, whether it's private. So people want to use communications providers to offer them this secure communications. And this is where the problem comes in. The Investigatory Powers Bill, the draft that's out there, requires, or can require, communications providers in the UK to remove protection that a communication provider has added to the message so that you can read it. And this is part of maintaining an intercept capability, which they can be ordered to do. Now, the government has been a little bit wishy-washy about this, saying they don't mean to sort of diminish the security of the internet or force people to unencrypt things. Even the Joint Committee, which was fairly scathing on this, said that it shouldn't require CPs to remove encryption where it's not practicable to do so. And what this means is that if you've communicated to someone using encryption yourself, the CP can't unencrypt it, and this is good to have the law say, well, if you can't actually do it, you're not breaking the law by not doing it. So that's an important improvement. But it's not quite going far enough. At the moment, if you're using a service provider who does the security for you, like iMessage, like WhatsApp, those applications do it all for you. You don't have to think about the encryption yourself. Then they could be ordered to maintain an intercept capability which allows them to access the message. And that isn't good, because that would mean they have to effectively stop the way their system works now, using a system called end-to-end encryption, and make it so that it's not end-to-end anymore. Now, you wouldn't see a difference. It would look the same to you, but they'd be able to read the messages, sometimes when there's a warrant to intercept things. So they're no longer offering a secure communication service. And you couldn't trust it even if they said they do, because these orders are secret. They mustn't divulge them. And that's the problem. It seems the legislation is still trying to make it so that people can't reliably offer secure communications. Now, it might not matter if you're just talking to your mate down the road and what you're saying really isn't important and you couldn't care less if other people read it. Obviously there's messages like that, but it's very important for companies to be able to communicate securely, not just to other companies, but to their customers. You know, my bank communicating with me want to communicate securely. So they want to use secure communications that just work. And for them, it's a lot easier if they can go to a company that provides a secure communications service. They don't necessarily want to do it themselves, and they certainly don't want to have to force their customers to understand and install encryption systems. They'd like to be able to use a service provider to provide them with a secure communication service. The problem is, if they go to a provider that's based in the UK, they can't trust them. No matter what they say about their security, the law could be secretly requiring that security to be undermined, the way it's worded at the moment. Now, of course, everyone's going to say, think of the children, what about terrorists, etc. We can't have terrorists able to communicate secretly. That's what Cameron says. Well, the problem is the bill does allow terrorists to communicate secretly. It allows anyone to communicate secretly if they're prepared to go to the very small bother of setting up the encryption themselves. And doing so isn't illegal now and wouldn't be illegal under the bill. Terrorists, criminals, could communicate secretly to each other and do so completely legally, and there would be no way for those messages to be decoded and intercepted. So we've kind of lost that battle, and outlawing that is stupid for lots and lots of other reasons. You wouldn't be allowed to communicate secretly to your bank on your online banking if they outlawed that sort of thing. And you can't outlaw some of it and not others, because the whole point is you can't see what's being communicated, so you don't know whether the person communicating secretly is breaking a law like that. So they've seen some sense in not outlawing encryption, but they have targeted all those people who just want to communicate securely over iMessage and WhatsApp, want to communicate with their bank and so on, because those people are using someone else's secure communication service rather than doing it themselves, and they can't trust them. Now, businesses, of course, who want to get a service might look at companies in different countries, and of course, if they look at any supplier in the UK, they have to think, well, UK law means we can't trust them, we'll have to go somewhere else. And they would have to use secure communication services provided by other countries that actually have better human rights in terms of privacy of communications. Otherwise, communications that are meant to be secure, to my bank, to my doctor, to my lawyer, to my MP, to a journalist if I'm a source, could all be monitored, and I've got no way of knowing, unless I go to that extra little bit of bother that obviously criminals would do of installing encryption myself. So this is all about you and me communicating with our friends, communicating with our colleagues, businesses communicating with each other, and being able to trust the service provider you're using. And the way it is now, you can't trust them. So we need it to be clear in the bill, and that's why I've started a petition.